Ani Nindanawe Maganidog. Hello, my relatives.
Gazali Squadrumekog. Begi Kendasa Wigamig.
Leech Lake Tribal College.
Our speaker today, who we are extremely honored to have with us, is Mrs. Rochelle Johnson, Principal and Superintendent of the Pine Point School in Ponsord. Rochelle has a Master's of Science degree in Education from Bemidji State University. She is also an enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation, and today her topic is Resiliency, a response to historical trauma. So please, let's welcome Superintendent Rochelle Johnson.
Hi, good afternoon, and like they said, I'm Rochelle Johnson, and currently I am the superintendent over at Pine Point. I used to work here for Leech Lake. I used to be over at the Bug-and-Agishik School. Some of you look very, very familiar. I want to talk to you today about using resiliency as a response to historical trauma. In this particular presentation, I have a number of resources that I've used for this. Resiliency is my doctoral thesis, so you're going to see some of the work that I've done. A lot of the work that's in this presentation is based on a couple of authors named Wolin and Wolin. They were kind of the foremost authorities in resiliency research. Resiliency research is a pretty recent area of study, and probably within the last 20 years. And out of all the resiliency research that I've looked at, I absolutely love theirs. And a lot of the resiliency that I'm talking about today is coming from their work and from their research. I've paired this with a lot of work that comes from, and some of you will probably be familiar with Ruby Payne. She does a framework for understanding poverty. Again, I'm a certified trainer for Ruby Payne, so I do use some of her work, and I think it just works so well with what we're doing in the research of resiliency, and especially as a response to historical trauma. And all societies generally have these 5 basic institutions. You have your government, family, economics, education, and religion. Those 5 basic institutions are generally what make up a society. Okay? And when we go into historical trauma, you will see that historical trauma, especially for Native people, has really impacted all 5 areas of Native society and those institutions. The traditions of the Native culture and the Native society, those traditions have really greatly been impacted by the historical trauma. These are generational types of things. So there's your sociology, psychology 101. Okay, now to historical trauma, and you'll see how this is all going to relate together. Okay, what is historical trauma? Okay, historical trauma, it's trauma upon trauma that happens to a specific group of people, and it's generation after generation after generation. The ramifications are generation after generation, okay? And it impacts everybody. In our education systems, we are still dealing with the ramifications of the historical trauma of all of our ancestors being possibly removed from their homes, sent to boarding schools, those kinds of things. And you see it in our education today. With all of our babies who are in school now, we are still dealing with the impact of that. In our government, it started with the federal jurisdiction where Native peoples, where our right to self-govern, those kinds of things were greatly impacted. The type of government that we had was impacted. It all fell into federal jurisdiction. We had no more say-so over what becomes, what happens to us or around us as a people. And what we have today, though, is our tribal government. So it's gone from federal jurisdiction kind of back to tribal government. But our tribal government today is still dealing with the ramifications of the historical trauma of those things that happened to our ancestors. So in our language, greatly impacted, severely impacted, you know, from for some tribes having a total loss of their original language to maybe having limited language. And what we have today is a great movement towards language revitalization. Our economics. The things that have happened to Native people in our history, the things that have caused the trauma for Native peoples, put our people in extreme poverty. We didn't have the right anymore to self-sustain. Our hunting rights, our fishing rights, all of those things have been greatly impacted. Again, the other institution of our society, religion, what maintains the culture. And this is kind of the one separate area of these other institutions. This is one of those areas that as Native people, we've really been able to hang on to and to utilize in some of our healing and in some of our abilities to move forward out of historical trauma. It really is what maintains our culture. Historical trauma, it impacts also individuals, it impacts groups, not just the society. And here's how. We see it today, and we've seen it in our past generations, as it shows itself through alcoholism and other forms of substance abuse. This is kind of how it's rearing its head, the impacts and ramifications of historical trauma. Our mental health has been greatly impacted. We see many, many more cases of anxiety and depression, low self-esteem, lack of identity, identity crises, those kinds of things. So it impacts our mental health. Historical trauma it impacts our physical health, you know, being in poverty and all those kinds of things. It's very, we see much more situations of diabetes and obesity, and you see lots and lots of movements now to try to deal with those situations. But these are some of the ramifications of historical trauma, the things that have happened. So where is the help? Where are we at? What do we do with this? Okay. When we really utilize resiliency, it's going to allow us to bounce back from these things healthier and stronger and smarter. Okay. What's interesting here is the resilient people who have good resiliency, have the ability to not only love, but have developed the ability to be loved. Isn't that one of the hardest things? You know, when you are surviving, when you are overcoming, when you have low self-esteem, when so much of your life ends up being shame-based or those things, the ability to be loved, I think, is absolutely, you know, we love. You know, I love you, I love you, I love you, you love your children, love your, you know. But boy, when somebody loves you back, isn't that tough to accept that and just, you know. So resilient people have learned how to be loved just as much as they've learned to be loving. Resilient people have the ability to stay holy in an unholy place, to not be damaged by those unholy things. We can do that. We can help build that in our young people. We can build that in ourselves, you know. I think it's a good starting place on how to start overcoming some of the ramifications of historical trauma. And we want to use appropriate interventions, and we do that based on resources. And the reason we say that is because most failures occur because of missing pieces. And we know the ramifications of historical trauma tell us that there's lots and lots of missing pieces in our culture, lots of missing pieces in our personal lives, in our communities, and all of that. So when we look at these families who are dealing with the ramifications of all of these things that have happened generation after generation after generation, we have lots and lots of missing pieces. We need to be able to fill in some of those missing pieces. Okay? Knowledge of hidden rules. Every society, every culture, every community, every classroom, everything has hidden rules. What happens when you come from a background where you're say from a poverty, there's lots of hidden rules that happen there. But let's say you go to a Native home. One of the hidden rules of Native home is that when somebody comes to your house, the first thing you're going to do is offer them something to eat. You're going to offer them something to drink. And the other hidden rule there that nobody talks about is it's good manners to what? Take it, even if it's just a little bit. Okay? That's a hidden rule. Do we ever, you know, we can teach that. We can teach that kind of good manners. But when you go, say, to a house where there's poverty, one of the things is people say to you in poverty, did you get enough? Are you full? Do you want some more? Even if they have very little. because that's to honor you. This is what I have. Let me honor you by sharing it with you. That's kind of a tribal thing, that's kind of a cultural thing, but it's also kind of a poverty thing. Food, for example, in middle class, if you go to somebody's home in middle class, what are they going to say to you? They're going to say, did you like it? How was it? Was it good? Because they kind of value food for the quality. In lower class, we value it for quantity. Did you get enough? In middle class, you know, we value it for quantity or for quality. Did you like it? You know? And in upper class, they value it for the way it looks. In middle, you know, upper class, you ever see those shows on TV, those cooking shows, and they get so many points for their presentation? You know, because that's really valued. You know, so you get this plate with this beautiful presentation on. It's really valued for that. But my point is that there are hidden rules everywhere and about everything. There's hidden rules about fighting. There's hidden rules about discipline. There's hidden rules about noise. And in poverty, sometimes like the hidden rules about noise have to do with maybe two reasons for that. Maybe the noise level is a lot higher because sometimes you have a lot of people living in a small space. And you have to be a little bit louder to be heard. And sometimes the noise level is a little higher because you want to drown out some things that you don't want to hear. Kids can learn how to become more resilient regardless of their IQ. Intelligence does not make any difference at all in the ability to build resilience. Girls tend to become resilient by building caring relationships, while boys tend to bounce back learning how to problem solve. That's really key when you're working with our young people and working with our children. And guess what? No learning ever takes place without a healthy relationship. Recognize survivor's pride. What is it? It's where you honor the struggle. We don't pity them. We don't feel sorry for them. We honor the struggle. Okay? It needs to be recognized, not pitied. To know that even one life is better because we have existed is to have succeeded. Ralph Waldo Emerson. There you go. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you.
You're not going to have a learning experience unless you have a healthy relationship. And that's what Miikinaa 2012 is about, having healthy relationships for success.
Right.
And so I want to say miigwech to Rochelle, and I'll give you a small token of our appreciation.
Oh, miigwech. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.
Miigwech.
Hope there's something you can use. Thank you.
Leech Lake Tribal College provides quality higher education grounded in Anishinaabe values. Miigwech.